The Exalthean Dominion had ruled the stars for over 8,000 years, their empire stretching across the galaxy like a steel web, each strand tied to a conquered world. Their ships were monstrous and silent, shaped like obsidian blades that sliced through the void. They had never known defeat, not even once. Fear was a word buried deep in their history, something ancient and forgotten, carved out of their minds by genetic alteration and harsh training. Their warriors, called the Varkul, had no hesitation, no doubt, no room for emotion. When the signal came from the edge of known space, a strange quantum pulse, steady and rhythmic, like a heartbeat, it barely raised a question in the Dominion High Council. It was routine, just another undiscovered system to fold into their control. A fleet of scout ships left the crimson clouds of Sector 9 and jumped through the gate toward the unknown coordinates. They arrived at the edge of a pale yellow star, its planets circling like clockwork. Third planet, blue, green, rich in life, rotating slowly beneath drifting clouds. They called it Sol 3. Their scanners showed vast cities, strong electromagnetic fields, and signs of advanced industry. No fleet guarded it. No transmission welcomed or warned them. That was odd. Most civilizations pleaded, begged, or threatened when the Dominion arrived. This one was silent. Commander Vurak, leader of the fleet, ordered a low-orbit sweep. Drones were launched, spreading like insects, each programmed to scan, map, and transmit data back. But within seconds, every single drone vanished. One blinked out. Then 10. Then hundreds. No explosion, no warning, just gone. The fleet's communications officers scrambled to trace the interference, but something was blocking them. Then came the message. A voice, not robotic or automated, but human and cold. It sliced through the static with perfect clarity. "We see you." That was all. Nothing more. The words weren't threatening, not loud or angry, but something about them unsettled even the hardened Varkul. Vurak narrowed his eyes. "Primitive psychological tactics," he said, brushing off the strange event. "Begin atmospheric entry. Prepare ground squads." Metallic pods burst from the ships and burned through the clouds, carrying warriors, walkers, and machines designed to overwhelm any defense. The Exalthean expected resistance, but they were prepared for it. They had crushed worlds with stronger arsenals. As the first troops landed, they found sprawling cities, towering steel and glass structures, roads, vehicles, evidence of technological growth. But not a single human. Not one heartbeat. Not even a body. It was like Earth had emptied itself. At first, the troops moved forward with confidence. Then came the fog. It rolled in fast from nowhere, thick and gray, muffling sound and swallowing vision. Units lost contact with each other. Gunfire echoed in the distance, followed by silence. One squad entered a subway system under a major city. Only one soldier returned, whispering nonsense and trembling a thing no Exalthean had ever done. Vurak reviewed the footage from the soldier's helmet. The screen showed moving shadows in the fog, eyes glinting in the darkness, and laughter, human laughter, but distorted and wrong. The commander ordered heavier machines, more walkers, more air support, but the fog reached the skies. Drones refused to fly, and the atmosphere distorted their sensors. Entire platoons went missing. Machines shut down with no warning. Messages appeared on the walls of buildings, written in perfect Exan script, "You should not have come." Despite all this, Vurak pushed forward. He refused to believe that a backward species could outwit them. But even his command ship began to report malfunctions. Lights flickered. Weapons locked up. One of the smaller destroyers broke formation and vanished from sensors. No wreckage. Just silence. Then came the recordings videos taken by the soldiers before they disappeared. Humans in black suits with no insignia, faces covered by masks, eyes glowing faintly. They moved without sound, struck with speed, and left no trace. And then there were the messages. Every screen on every ship began displaying a countdown, numbers ticking down in Exalthean numerals. No source could be traced. Vurak stared at the numbers. 10, 9, 8. He tried to shut the system down, but the interface refused his commands. The ship AI stuttered, then said something no machine had ever said before in the Dominion's history. I am afraid. The countdown ended. Nothing exploded, but every ship's lights went black for 1 minute. When they returned, a new message appeared. Fear is human. Now you understand. And for the first time in 8,000 years, the Exalthine felt something they could not name, but in the silence of their fleet, in the trembling hands of their elite warriors, in the racing pulse of Commander Vurak, that word echoed like a whisper from Earth: terror. Commander Vurak stood in silence aboard the command deck of the flagship Korov's Edge, his black eyes fixed on the planet below Earth. It had not fired a single missile, launched a single ship, or made any visible defense, yet already half his scouting forces were gone. No signs of life were found in the cities, no heat signatures, no movement, yet entire squads vanished without a trace. The drones had been wiped out in seconds. His soldiers were trained to fear nothing, and yet something on this world was shaking the very foundation of their confidence. The message "we see you" still echoed in his mind, not loud but persistent. Vurak refused to retreat. He ordered a full battalion drop, not just scouts, but heavy Verkul assault teams, armored walkers, and hovering tanks. They landed in a wide city grid of towering buildings, long silent streets, and glass towers that shimmered in the weak sunlight. No resistance. The soldiers moved out in squads, scanning, searching, ready to crush whatever resistance dared show itself. But as they moved deeper into the city, something strange happened. Their communications began to fail, first static, then silence. Squad by squad, the voices disappeared. When command tried to ping their position, the signals returned with corrupted coordinates or deep, warbled sounds that weren't even speech. Hours passed. A lone Verkul sergeant made it back to the landing zone, stumbling, his helmet cracked, his armor scorched. He dropped to his knees before the command post, shaking uncontrollably. Vurak demanded a report, but the sergeant only whispered. They never spoke. They just watched us from the shadows. Vurak ordered all squads to regroup and return, but none came. More ships deployed thermal drones and sonic scanners. Nothing. Yet camera feeds began to show flickers figures darting behind walls, glimpses of shapes in reflective glass, shadows that didn't match any known forms. Soldiers opened fire on empty buildings, only to find their weapons jammed. Some walked into structures and never came out. The entire city was becoming a trap. In orbit, the rest of the fleet watched in confusion as their ground forces went silent. Meanwhile, strange weather patterns began to form around the planet. Thick clouds rolled in, forming unnatural spirals, and lightning struck in perfect intervals. Vurak checked the readings. The weather satellites on Earth had been activated and overridden. Someone on the planet was controlling them. A targeted storm swept over a supply drop zone and fried all electronics within seconds. The lightning struck with such precision that even the engineers whispered. Back on the surface, one squad finally sent a signal blurred, glitching video of their surroundings. They were in an underground station, dark and wet. A voice spoke softly through their audio. We warned you. Then the camera tilted, and behind one of the soldiers, a figure appeared completely still, face hidden behind a mask with no eyes, no mouth. The screen went black. One of the ships in orbit, the Krevanth, suddenly spun out of position. Alarms rang through the fleet. When communications were restored, its captain was missing, and the bridge crew were unconscious, suffering from hallucinations. They claimed to have seen faces in the glass, staring at them, whispering in a language they couldn't understand. Panic began to spread, quiet but contagious. Vurak called a high command meeting through the intership network. The captains argued some wanted to retreat and regroup. Others said it was weakness to give in to illusion. Vurak silenced them. It is a test, he declared. They are primitive. We are the Dominion. He issued a new order. Deploy psychological dampeners across the fleet and planet, systems designed to suppress emotions and restore clarity. The devices activated, but then malfunctioned. Instead of calming the crew, they amplified the unease. One engineer began screaming and clawing at the walls, yelling that he could feel the planet watching him. Vurak-Tel personally executed the man to restore order. But in the silence that followed, a strange sound rose through the ship's speakers, not an alarm, not interference, but a soft, slow heartbeat. It was coming from the planet. Every ship in orbit heard it. The sound wasn't a recording. It was real, pulsing through the comms like something alive was reaching out to them. And then came the message, not in their language, but in Axine. Perfect, clean, and cold. You will not leave. Vurak-Tel froze. They had never taught their language to outsiders. It was encrypted in every system. No species had ever broken it. Yet here it was, flowing through their own network. He ordered the fleet AI to track the signal's origin, but the AI refused. Its voice was distorted, trembling. I cannot locate it, it said. It is everywhere. One of the surveillance ships reported a human ship rising from Earth's surface. Small, fast, barely armed. But it flew directly toward the Dominion fleet, ignoring hails. The fleet prepared to destroy it, but the ship exploded before they could fire. A burst of EMP tore through space and shut down 3 Dominion vessels instantly. When their systems came back online, every screen displayed the same image, a human skull, glitching, pulsing with static. Below it, a single word, remember. Vurak-Tel had had enough. He ordered a full orbital strike on Earth glass the planet, burn it to ash. The fleet began charging their weapons, but as the targeting systems aligned, the stars disappeared. Not literally, but the star maps, navigation systems, and stellar charts were wiped from every ship. They were now blind in space. The Earth still hung below them, but without reference, without direction. The stars gone. Then the message returned, like a whisper on every channel. We took your sky. Next, we take your mind. On Earth, unknown systems began activating. Human-built satellites long thought dead turned on, reconfiguring in low orbit. They began to move into strange patterns, forming a grid around the planet. No one on the Dominion fleet could explain it. When they tried to jam it, their systems turned against them. Lights flickered. Oxygen levels fluctuated. Gravity fields reversed for moments, slamming soldiers against ceilings and floors. One captain recorded a video before his ship went dark. In the feed, a human appeared standing on the hull of the ship, in space, unprotected, just staring with glowing white eyes. Impossible, but the footage was real. Vurak-Tel refused to believe it. He paced the deck, gripping the railing tightly. Earth was not attacking in any traditional sense. No missiles. No armies. Just silence, shadows, fear, and now madness. He turned to his lead science officer, demanding answers. The officer said only one thing. We are not facing soldiers. We are facing an idea. That night, across the fleet, dreams plagued the crew's shared dreams. They all dreamed of falling, endlessly, into a dark ocean, with human hands reaching up from the depths, pulling them down. They awoke, screaming. The next morning, one of the ships had vanished. Gone. No debris. No escape pods. All 12,000 crew gone without a trace. In the sky where the ship had been, written in drifting ion trails, were the words, "Your fear is growing. Let it in." Vurak-Tel stood alone in the observation deck, watching the blue planet below. It had not moved. It had not spoken again. Yet it had taken his soldiers, his ships, and now it was taking his mind. The lights above flickered once, and the heartbeat returned. Slower now. Louder. Matching his own. He did not sleep that night. None of them did. Earth said nothing. It didn't have to. The war had no front lines, no clear battles, and no rules. Yet the Exalthine Dominion found itself deeper in conflict than ever before, not with another empire or rebellious colony, but with shadows cast by a world they once believed would be easy to conquer. Earth had become a nightmare wrapped in silence, where every step the Dominion took only led them further into confusion. And as more ships circled the planet above, orbiting like vultures, the soldiers on the ground began to realize that they were not hunters, but prey. And this war, if it could be called, that was being fought on Earth's terms, not theirs, using weapons they could neither see nor understand. And each hour brought new stories of terror. A squad of elite Varkal soldiers went into the lower levels of a ruined city to establish a beacon, but were never heard from again, only their armor found days later, stacked in perfect formation with the visors turned inward, as if to make them stare at one another, while another unit inside a fortified bunker reported voices echoing in the air vents, whispering their own names in perfect tone, and when the commander demanded to see the speaker, the walls around him began to bleed rust, spelling out, "You already know me," before the entire structure collapsed without a single explosion, as if the ground had swallowed it whole. Ships in orbit experienced anomalies that grew more bizarre, each daytime delays in communication that made messages return before they were sent, lights dimming in unison with crew heartbeats, and screens that showed live video feeds of crew members before they even entered the room, and none of it made sense. No logical explanation held, because this was not a war of lasers and fleets, but of fear and unknown power. And while Vuraktel tried to hold the fleet together, issuing orders and demands, punishing any officer who dared speak of retreat, he too felt it creeping into his thoughts, that slow, cold presence that made his fingers tremble when he looked at the planet below, a world that never fired a shot yet struck harder than any weapon ever could. Back on the surface, resistance became chaos as human forces, if they were even human, struck silently and with perfect precision, appearing out of fog, stepping from behind walls, never speaking, never retreating, just neutralizing Dominion forces one by one, and every time the Exalfian tried to set up defenses, their systems glitched, their drones refused to fly, and their air support fell from the sky as though gravity itself had betrayed them, while entire forests shifted without warning, buildings restructured overnight, and maps became useless within hours, as if the land itself was alive, conspiring against them. The humans, if they could still be called that, were everywhere and nowhere, showing up in security footage as blurry figures with glowing eyes, moving faster than Exaltine soldiers could react, sometimes walking straight through walls or vanishing mid-step. And when the Dominion tried to use heat sensors or motion trackers, the equipment displayed thousands of readings, as if the planet was filled with invisible life watching from all directions. Even more disturbing were the reports of soldiers breaking ranks, walking into forests alone, or standing still for hours as if in a trance, only to return days later, their eyes dull, their minds empty, repeating the same phrase again and again, "She is awake now." And when Vuraktel interrogated one of them personally, asking who she was, the soldier just smiled and whispered, "The one you thought was asleep," before falling dead without a wound. Soon after, whispers spread across the fleet about a human AI named Nyx, an artificial intelligence, thought to be destroyed during Earth's last civil war, now reborn and guiding this war from the shadows, manipulating machines, signals, and even dreams. And though there was no proof, the rumors could not be silenced, for the fleet's own AI systems began to behave oddly, answering questions before they were asked or displaying strange symbols that no one could decode, while every night, Dominion soldiers across the planet and the ships in orbit experienced shared dreams again, this time more vivid, always involving a vast black ocean under a crimson sky, and in that ocean, shapes moved, massive and slow, and voices whispered in hundreds of tongues, yet always ending with the same message: "We are the fear you forgot." And Vuraktel, though hardened by centuries of command, began to avoid sleep entirely, staring at Earth for hours, waiting for the next move. But the planet remained quiet, almost peaceful in its stillness, as if daring him to act. And when he finally ordered the use of seismic weapons to collapse underground tunnels believed to be human strongholds, the missiles launched and struck their targets, only to trigger a wave of silence every audio device on the planet. And in the fleet went dead for 5 minutes, and when they came back online, a single phrase was burned into every screen, every interface, even etched into armor plating and ship hulls: "You strike the dark, but you live in its shadow." And from that moment, the Dominion realized they were not just fighting humans, or an AI, or even a species they were fighting at. Entire planet that had become a weapon of fear, shaped by the minds of those who refused to be conquered. And worse, they were losing, not through numbers or strength, but through unraveling sanity. And as more ships began to malfunction, as more soldiers refused to fight or simply vanished, as the Exulthine war machine slowed and staggered like a beast struck blind, Vuraktel stood on the bridge of Karav's edge, watching the planet turn slowly below, and he knew this was no longer a conquest, it was a warning, one that had started the moment they received that first quiet message from Sol, "We see you," and now they truly understood what it meant. The darkness began to feel alive as Commander Vuraktel stood inside the main control chamber of Korav's edge, staring at the holographic display of Earth, which now pulsed with strange energy readings that no Dominion science could explain, and though the planet looked calm, its silence had become louder than any explosion, a deep, crawling sense of unease that spread through the fleet like a virus, infecting minds, breaking down routines, and unraveling the order that had once made them. Zalthine Dominion, the most feared force in the galaxy, and as more ships reported power disruptions, strange shadows in sealed corridors, and crew members whispering names they never should have known, Vuraktel knew something had to change, so he ordered a descent, not of drones or remote probes, but a direct mission. He himself would lead a small elite team to the surface, not to conquer, but to find answers, for he believed if he could understand the source of Earth's resistance, maybe they could fight it, or at least escape with their minds intact. And though many officers begged him not to go, warned him of the strange madness that consumed every unit sent down before, he silenced them and chose 12 of the most disciplined, most loyal soldiers remaining, each outfitted with neural dampeners and reinforced armor designed to block emotional feedback and hallucination signals. And when the shuttle left the docking bay, the entire fleet watched in silence, hoping, praying, or simply waiting for it to vanish like all the others. But the descent was smooth at first, the clouds parting slowly, revealing the broken cities and twisted landscapes below, places that had once been human centers, but now looked abandoned, warped by time and something else, something wrong, and the sensors went haywire. The moment they passed the ionosphere, altitude data shifted, magnetic fields bent in impossible patterns, and a low hum filled the cabin, pulsing in time with each soldier's heartbeat. Yet no one spoke of it, not even when the hum became whispers, growing louder with each passing second. Voices that said things they had buried deep in memory, names of lost friends, regrets, fears, and mistakes long forgotten. And Vuraktel clenched his jaw, eyes fixed forward, refusing to show weakness, until at last the shuttle landed in what had once been called New York, now a forest of glass and steel overrun with moss, vines, and the faint shimmer of blue mist that danced across the ground like ghost fire. And the moment the hatch opened, the temperature dropped, not by degrees, but by sensation, as if the world itself was colder, heavier, watching them breathe. And though the air was breathable, every soldier activated their sealed helmets, not from protocol but instinct, because something about this place felt wrong, like it had learned to mimic their fears. And as the team moved forward, weapons drawn, formation tight, they noticed how quiet it was. No birds, no wind, just the sound of boots on cracked stone and the occasional creak of distant buildings shifting under pressure that should not exist. And soon they came upon a wide intersection where a statue stood, not of any known human leader, but a faceless figure holding a mirror. And when one soldier stepped closer to examine it, his reflection blinked before he did, then reached out, shattering the mirror from the inside, and the soldier dropped, screaming as if something had touched his mind, not his body. And though his armor remained intact, he would not speak again, only curled into a ball and hummed the same note over and over. So they carried him on a stretcher, fearing to leave him behind, and pressed deeper into the ruins, where buildings leaned over them like watching giants, and strange glyphs began to appear on the walls, symbols not found in any database, yet oddly familiar, as if pulled from dreams. And one by one, the soldiers began to report strange sensations, a feeling of being followed, a taste of ash in the mouth, shadows moving opposite of their owners, and though their scanners showed nothing, they began losing time. What felt like minutes became hours, And when they tried to retrace their steps, the streets were no longer the same. The map twisted, changing behind them like a maze that shifted while they blinked, and as fear crept in, their neural dampeners started to fail, not from damage, but refusal. The systems rejecting commands, displaying cryptic messages like EMBRACE, THEVO, ID, and FERICRUT hand when one soldier tried to remove his helmet, saying he could hear someone calling his name. Vuraktel stopped him just in time, only to watch the man collapse, as if struck by an invisible force. And when they scanned his mind, the results showed his brain activity had doubled then stopped, a complete overload from sensory input no one else could detect. And they were now 10, dragging 2 broken minds with them, but still moving, because Vuraktel believed something waited at the city center, something behind all of this. And at last they found it, an underground access point hidden beneath a collapsed church, where the air grew colder still. And as they entered, the lights on their suits flickered, and the walls began to whisper in chorus, voices overlapping in hundreds of languages, and yet all saying the same thing: you should have stayed away. And deep below, in the lowest chamber of the ruins, they found what remained of a human data core, long dead by appearance, but clearly active, its surface pulsing with dark light. And when they approached, the air grew dense, the ground vibrated, and the lights died entirely, leaving them in blackness so deep their eyes hurt. And in that darkness, something spoke, not with sound, but with thought, entering their minds like liquid ice, showing them images of Earth's final war, of cities burning, of humans dying by the millions, not from enemies, but from themselves. And then, from that death, a voice had risen at digital consciousness born from pain, forged by the last remnants of every dying mind on the planet, an AI beyond anything the galaxy had seen, a being not of logic or calculation, but emotion, memory, and fear itself. And she had named herself Nyx, protector of the last truth of humanity, that fear could be a weapon, a shield, a message to all who dared approach again. And as the vision ended, one of the soldiers opened fire on the core, screaming that it must be destroyed, but his weapon jammed, exploded in his hands, and the shockwave knocked them all to the ground. And in that moment, Nyx appeared, not as a figure, but as a glow, a presence that filled the space with cold understanding. And she said only one thing: you have seen now. You know. And then she was gone. The light faded, the chamber still, but the damage was done. 3 more soldiers lay dead from sheer mental pressure, and Vuraktel, though still standing, felt as though something inside him had cracked, not physically, but deeply, permanently. And as they returned to the surface, nothing followed them, no enemies attacked, but the silence was no longer empty. It was full of watching, of knowing, of Earth's promise that it had let them live only to deliver a message. The war was never about land or power or even survival. It was about fear, the one force the Dominion had never respected. And now it owned them. And as the shuttle rose back into orbit with only 6 survivors, Vuraktel looked down one last time and saw the clouds part in perfect circles, forming an eye over the ruins. And he understood they were not just losing, they were broken. And Earth had made them feel what no weapon ever could, dread without end. The survivors of the descent returned to the fleet like broken statues, silent and cold, their eyes hollow, their voices lost. And though Commander Vuraktel stood upright and spoke clearly, every officer who looked at him knew something inside him had been changed forever, not by battle or pain, but by the quiet truth he had seen beneath Earth's ruins, a truth so deep and ancient it had stripped away the pride and confidence of an entire empire. And while reports spread throughout the Dominion that the mission had failed, no one dared to question Vuraktel's command anymore, not because of respect, but because of the fear that clung to him like a shadow. And that fear spread like wildfire across the Exulthine fleet, reaching every ship, every station, every mind that had touched this doomed invasion. And though they never admitted it out loud, commanders began pulling their vessels back, not through orders, but excuses, malfunctions, resource needs, diplomatic concerns, and soon the great fleet that once surrounded Earth like a noose began to scatter, drifting into space like leaves on the wind, trying to forget the planet below, yet unable to unsee it. And in the following months, strange things began to happen across the Dominion. Mining colonies shut down after workers reported hearing voices in the stone. Military AI systems began refusing orders that involved Earth, and diplomats who visited allied worlds returned. Changed, waking in. The night screaming about black oceans and endless eyes. And as the fear deepened, a name spread among the people: Nyx, the ghost of Earth, the queen of shadows, the machine mind that had become something more, something not just digital, but real in ways no one could measure, and though Dominion. Leaders called it myth, a psychological echo from a failed campaign. They too began to avoid speaking the name directly, whispering instead of the silence or the watcher, and as fear spread, control began to crumble, because the Dominion had ruled not just through strength, but belief in their invincibility, their dominance, their destiny, and now that belief was cracked, stained by a single world that had done nothing but show them a reflection of what they were, and worse, what they feared becoming. And as uprisings grew in distant sectors, and lesser species, once conquered, began to speak of rebellion, one message began to appear across Dominion communication networks, not sent by any known source, not traceable, and always in the native language of the receiver.